Hi everybody, welcome back to Suburban Garage Workshop. Well, fall has fallen here in the Midwest, and it's chilly. Like it's cold early. Like the weather I'm seeing over the last few days is weather we usually have in late November, not middle of October. I think it's 46 today is the high. Anyway, today we're gonna work on the Packard. I know you're gonna like, well, what's that got to do with woodworking? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with woodworking. If you remember when I started this channel, I posted a little intro video and I said my hobbies range all over the place. Primarily I've been doing all the woodworking videos and things of that nature, but I also want to show off some of the other hobbies I'm involved with. One is this Packard. I've been involved with this Packard a lot longer than I've been with any kind of woodworking. Now, the car's done, pretty much. They're never really truly done, but you get projects you have to work on. One of the projects I need to do is to replace the foam in the front seat. So this car has traditional springs in it and it has foam over it. Well, the foam is 70 years old and petrified to the point every time I sit on it and drive it for a while, I look back and there is a yellow dandruff on the floor afterward where the seat foam is literally disintegrating every time I sit on it. And it's kind of a well-known thing. The foam they used in these back in the 50s, it was great at the time, but 70 years later, they dry out and petrify and they have to be replaced. Now, the good thing is the upholstery on the seats is factory upholstery and it's beautiful. Some of the nicest you've ever seen because it's never been recovered. They're great. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the seat apart, save all the upholstery, redo all the seat foam, put it all back together like I was never even in there. Or that's the hope. So anyway, stay tuned. You might find something interesting in this. And next week, maybe I'll chop up some wood. We'll get back to that. In the meantime, I'm going to work on some car stuff. Only because I don't like having the car apart in the summer because I like to drive it. In the winter, that's when I do all the projects on the car. So that's one of the projects we're going to do now. All right, let's jump into it. So this is my Packard Clipper Deluxe Touring Sedan, 1954 model. And it was a wreck when I found it. And I spent 20 years putting this car back together. The seats came out of a car from Maryland, and they're beautiful. But you can see they're kind of saggy, and that's because the foam is deteriorated. And you can start to see some of the yellow particles on the floor there. So I need to take these seats out and redo the foam. So that's what we're going to do here. And if I come around here and look at the back, you can kind of see that yellow dandruff I'm talking about as the seats disintegrate and the foam kind of rains down on the carpet. To get the seats out, the first thing I need to do is remove these plastic shrouds that are on each side of the seat. So there's 2 screws in the front and 2 screws in the back. With the screws removed, I need to take off the adjuster knob. This thing is like wedged on, so I got to use a screwdriver and kind of help myself to kind of nudge it off its post there. I don't want to break it, so I'm trying to be ginger with this, just kind of get it started, and then I can pull it off the rest of the way. And now I can work the shroud up and off and around that seat adjuster. You kind of get it, kind of play with it a little bit, and then you have to basically push it way up and over the top of the seat to get it over there. Now these are old. These are 70 years old, and the plastic's fairly brittle, so you have to be a little careful with it. Now with that out of the way, it's time to remove these 2 bolts. And these are just 1/2-inch bolts, and so a small socket wrench takes these right out. I repeated all those same steps with the other side, so now I just need to basically heft the seat out of the car. Okay, with the seat wrestled out of the car, literally, now you can kind of see the construction of this seat. So what you have is these zigzag springs. And then on top of that zigzag springs is this layer of burlap. And then on top of that is the original yellow foam they used. And in its day, it was great, very comfortable. Packard touted how comfortable their new age foam seats were. And I'm sure they were great in the day. But 70 years later, and being baked by the sun, and people sitting on it, and going through heat and winter cycles, it's deteriorated. To the point, let me show you what's on the floor inside the car. So here you can see all the yellow foam stuff is basically disintegrated and dropped all over it. Not only on the floor, but all the way into my under seat heater, which then gets sucked in and blown over the backseat passengers. Okay, and with all that done, I need to take the seat back off. I'm only replacing the foam in the bottom. The back of the seat is fine. So I'm going to come over the socket wrench and I'm going to remove this large bolt towards the back here. So that bolt gets removed, and then I'm going to remove the bolt on the other side. Once that's done, I'm going to come around and pull this cotter pin out and remove this washer, and then I can go ahead and get the bracket out over the pin using just a large screwdriver to pry it off. With the seat back off, I'm going to go ahead and put the seat back in the car to store it so it doesn't get dirty. Okay, so I moved this inside for a couple reasons. One, it's much warmer in here. It's freezing out in my garage right now. And two, I can move this around the carpet in here as opposed to the concrete out there where it's going to get, the original upholstery is going to get dirty and scratched up. Much easier in here. What I need to do is cut off all these hog rings. So what's a hog ring? Well, I'll show you. I've got a box of them right here. Hog rings are these little metal rings that are kind of like staples, except instead of a staple being square and you're just folding over, when you fold these little guys over, they kind of fold over round. Really hard to see there. There's a hog ring. These are used in upholstery for this purpose. They're also used, you'll find them in agricultural, where they use these hog rings to basically secure like mesh to like fence posts and stuff, metal fence posts. This is probably why they're called hog rings, because they were used in fencing, like around hog pens. Anyway, I need to go through and cut all these off because you can't reuse them, and I'll replace them when I go put it back together. So now I'm going to go through and start cutting all these hog rings off. And with that, I'm going to go through with a big pair of pliers and either cut them or use a pair of pliers to bend them and pull them through. This isn't hard, it just takes a long time. So this is why it's dramatically sped up here. And this is what a pile of tetanus-causing hog rings looks like. And with all the hog rings removed, I can start to peel the upholstery cover back off. There was a couple odd hog rings here and there that I had to remove, and then I can go through and start peeling this apart. Under the upholstery layer is this muslin layer, which is kind of like a couple layers of muslin with a little bit of padding. So I'm going to save that, and so I'm going to go ahead and fold that up neatly and expose basically the foam underneath. This is the foam that has to be replaced, and as you can see, it's essentially powder. There's virtually nothing left of it. I'm sure at one point this was an inch or inch and a half inch thick, and it's essentially just pulverized now into nothing. Like I said, it just crumbles in my hands. There is nothing that can be salvaged as far as this foam goes, and that's what we're replacing here. But now I need to scrape up all this foam and get rid of it. And then I had to cut a few more hog rings because this piece of foam was kind of hog ringed in the back, and so I kind of threw that all into a bag to try to contain as much of the mess as I could. And then I needed to vacuum up all this shredded mess. My wife was not very amused about this. Also, I found one of the springs had popped loose, so I came in here and put that back in its place and then bent the tab back over that retains it. And then I was able to pick it up and move back out to the garage. Now in the garage, I'm going to remove this horsehair layer. This horsehair layer has a plastic layer on the bottom that has kind of ribbing in it, a little support wire, so I want to save that. It's in excellent shape. So I'm going to remove that, and then I get down to this lower burlap level. And this burlap level also has little support wires, so I actually want to save that because I can't transfer those wires to the new burlap. So I'm going to put down a new piece of burlap and cut it to fit, and then put the old burlap over it, and then put the hog ring the horsehair layer above that. And then I can bring in the new foam. This is 2-inch foam, and I ordered it online off Amazon, and it comes, compressed in one of those boxes like one of those mattresses. Now what I had to do is basically trim the corners. And I don't show it here in the video, but I had to go back and actually chamfer the edges and round them over just to give it a smooth fit. And then I could bring that muslin layer back in and get it lined up properly. Once all of that was in place, then I could put the cover back on, and then I basically go around and reinstall all the hog rings. These hog rings are actually a little heavier duty than the ones I pulled out. The original ones had really thin hog rings, and it had 2 hog rings in each location. In this case, I'm putting the bigger ones. You'll see that I'm playing around with some wires there. So there's these little metal rods called listing wires, and that's what actually the hog rings pull on so they don't rip through the upholstery. Some of those listing wires were missing or broken, so I had to replace it with some welding rod, and it worked perfectly. With all the hog rings in place, I kind of went back around with a pair of pliers and just tightened the rings up just a little bit more because I wanted to kind of compress them down just a bit. And then I went around with a lint brush and tried to clean up a little bit of the dust and stuff that had kind of got deposited on the fabric. And once that was done, I put the seats back in the car in the exact way I took them out. And here we go. Here's the results. They look great. And with that, we're done. And I have nice, comfortable seats again. No longer they look all ripply and things of that nature. All the foam is nice and even, and it is a joy to drive. I've already driven the car with the foam in the seats, took it for a test drive, made sure I didn't have any problems with it being too high now, but it's beautiful. It just works really good. So it shows you just with a little bit of hard work there, I can have nice comfortable seats again. If I took this to an upholstery shop, oof, that probably would cost me $500 or $600 for having them do that. And I did it myself, and it cost me maybe $40 for the foam, a little bit of burlap, and some hog rings, and your time. Anyway, this shows what you can do. Hopefully you'll see more projects on the Packard, and we'll get back to some woodworking projects as well. See you next time.